Everybody, welcome to Rev'd Up for Sunday. We're two out of the three clergy of St. Mark's Episcopal Church in New Canaan, Connecticut. I'm Peter Walsh.
I'm John Kennedy.
And today we're bringing you Jesus, right? We've got Jesus here who's clearly not into church growth. He gets a crowd of people and he starts to tell them why they cannot be his disciples. This guy does not want fans. He wants followers. So, here we are. This is Luke chapter 14, verses 25 to 33. Now large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and he turned and said to them, "Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even life itself, cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not first sit down and estimate the cost to see whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it will begin to ridicule him, saying, 'This fellow began to build and was not able to finish.' Or what king, going out to wage a war against another king, will not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to oppose the one who comes against him with 20,000? If he cannot, then, while the other is still far away, he sends a delegation and asks for the terms of peace. So therefore, none of you can become my disciple if you do not give up all your possessions." Okay, so here we are, not the airbrush Jesus again here, and Jesus putting all the tough stuff right up front here, not in the fine print, as they say, with a radical call to no half-heartedness. This is an all-or-nothing proposition, and he uses that harsh Hebraic hermeneutic just to get everybody's attention.
Yes. I'm struck that, as you said at the beginning, this is clearly showing us a Jesus that is not interested in church growth as we would think about it or pursue it. And yet, what does the first verse say? Large crowds were traveling with him.
True.
And we aren't told that the crowd thinned out after this. Maybe it did, but I think there's an interesting sort of paradox here that Jesus is uncompromising, not airbrushed, and yet he's magnetic.
Yeah.
I find that maybe the most fascinating thing here.
And remember, or you don't remember because you were a little boy, but when I was in seminary, it was during the Jesus seminar, and they were all voting on whether or not the sayings of Jesus were real sayings of Jesus. This was much poo-pooed by the professors at the Yale Divinity School. Anyway, nevertheless, if I was to vote on such a thing, all this kind of harsh language, I would say, Jesus definitely said this stuff. Of course he did. Because who would make it up? Who would put this stuff in here? And it is interesting. It's almost a little bit like when I was a boy also, there was an ad for the Marines that used to say, "We're looking for a few good men." Now, the Marines would have to change that. There's a great and amazing Episcopal priest, Heidi, who was my mother-in-law's pastor in Florida, who used to be the commandant of a Marine boot camp.
Right.
So anyway.
A few good people.
Yeah. So, but we're getting the idea that by saying that we only want a few good people here, it actually swells the numbers. It's kind of an interesting reverse of magnetism. And
Yes, it is. I mean, I think we see this a bit, without wanting to stray far from the passage right out of the gate, but very often when there is a visionary with deep conviction who is walking the walk, not just talking the talk, that their program, their discipline, right? Jesus is talking about discipleship here, which is, of course, the discipline of following Jesus. Their discipline, when it is uncompromising, when it is clear, when it is radical, when it is a very, very strong and, again, clearly articulated and lived out alternative to the prevailing conventional ways of being, it does often draw people.
Yeah, interesting.
And this can be good, as in the Jesus movement, and as in, I think, more contemporary things we could talk about, such as, to varying degrees, the mindfulness movement, that calls for quite a lot of commitment, or various fitness movements, CrossFit, etc. But also cults, right? Which lead to all sorts of harm right up until, death. But that is certainly a dynamic that we
interesting.
see.
Yeah,
Yes.
very interesting. I remember in the past talking about this passage with Elizabeth, and she was talking about, this is Reverend Elizabeth, folks, who will be back soon. It was talking about how Jesus was thinning the crowd, and by the time he gets to his crucifixion, it's very thinned out. I think both of these things can be true. That's right. Fewer, but there's no doubt, John, that what you say is true about the strength and the clarity and the living and talking and walking and all this stuff. And Jesus lays it out in ways. Let's just jump in back to the text here and take it to at least the beginnings here, where we get Jesus saying, "Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even life itself, cannot be my disciple." And I know we're going to get into what hate means here, or how it was used in the parlance of his day. But also, as we get started here, I want to bring in Matthew too, as I know you would do the same thing, but I'll just introduce it. So Matthew has the same passage, but delivered slightly differently, which is, anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. So you get into this question of the word hate, which does not mean the antagonism that our word hate means.
No.
That, in the Hebraic day of Jesus, this is about hate means to love less.
Yes, that's right. That's right. It means to love less. And I think, for me anyway, thinking about it, it's helpful to keep in mind that Jesus was speaking to large crowds here that were not going to have this written down for them to refer to later. And even if it was, most of them couldn't read it. So
good call. Double good call.
This is a good teaching device to use very strong language that will literally make an impression in the brains of the hearers, so they remember it. And yes, I think hate clearly just means love less, as the Matthew softening of it. Perhaps we see, I think, here and there Matthew airbrushing and softening some things that, for one thing, come across more starkly and strongly in Luke. This is an example. Also, the Beatitudes, blessed are the poor, as Luke has it, or blessed are the poor in spirit, as Matthew has it, which is easier to generalize and waffle on. No offense to Matthew's version. But anyway, so it gets us off the hook for something like Jesus teaching hate, because obviously Jesus doesn't teach hate. He just doesn't do it. He teaches love, a love that clashes with the world. So it's a love with a lot of edges and thorns and so on, but it is love nonetheless. But it's still tough stuff, because we are, many of us, conditioned by our culture to put family first, right? And Jesus is saying no.
Yeah.
Family at best comes second.
Yeah. Interesting. And in the Hebrew scriptures, where we just want to name this, and then I want to really address what you just said here. In Genesis, where the Rachel and Leah story, where it says that Jacob, loved Rachel but hated Leah, but it just meant that he loved Rachel more.
Right.
I just wanted, that would be an example, and they get this in Deuteronomy with 2 wives and the golden calf. Just to say, we see this before, and so these folks these are Hebrew people that will go, they get what he's talking about here. But I think that the question of family and Jesus taking on the family, there are 7 categories here. 6 are family, and then the 7th is, yourself. And so Jesus has a way of speaking that is essentially what he's saying at some level is, if you want to learn to swim with me, you got to get all the way in the pool.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to give up everything. You got to get completely in. And that I think that the thing that we might say is that anything that could become idolatrous, he breaks apart, and family can become idolatrous. And we can be so strong in our family values that we eschew our values to the rest of the world. If you don't mind my saying, I think this is what the vice president was talking about when he talked about an ordered love, and the Pope came right back and said, no, that's not Roman Catholic teaching. That was a form of family first ordered love that the vice president put out, and the Pope said, no, that's actually not Jesus' teaching. So that in the all-inness, if you go all in with Christ, this getting all the way in and going first with the claim that Jesus wants for himself, which is what the claim in the Hebrew Scriptures for God. So Jesus, in some sense, claiming God here, that when you come through the other side, your love includes all of your family, and it includes all beyond your family too.
Yes,
I think that's the kind of thing that doesn't get fully fleshed out here.
Right. Jesus is for one thing knocking down tribalism
at every turn.
And yet, because Christianity has been institutionalized, mainstreamed for quite a long time, since just after Constantine / during Constantine, it's melded with culture and therefore with our tribe, that in such a way that has made it very difficult for I think the average person to see Christianity as a challenge to tribalism. But nonetheless, it absolutely is, and it is idolatrous to use it as a justification for such programs of tribalism and exclusion, and ranking certain groups as better or more worthy of our care and consideration than others. But nonetheless, it is very, very much rampant right now, as you alluded to. And I also actually that leads me to something I want to talk about perhaps later after we work through the passage more, which is how the cost of discipleship in the NRSV Bible, this passage is labeled as such. It's called The Cost of Discipleship, which is also a very important and very great book by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Right. So how I want to look later about how the cost of discipleship has essentially been diluted and watered down over time due to historical shifts, which is, I think, a super interesting, important thing.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. Do you want to launch into that now, or should we stick with picking up the cross and following me?
I'm with you. Let's come back to Dietrich Bonhoeffer and the cost of discipleship at the end after we go through a few more costs here. Okay,
that's right.
We've got the 6 family members plus yourself, and now we have Jesus. Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Mm-hmm. And this is, as you know, earlier in Luke had it, Jesus saying you need to pick up your cross daily and follow me. So this is a different eschatological disposition from Luke, that the end ain't coming so fast, that this is a daily discipline that is going to be strung out over time. And so the pick up your cross and follow me may not be literal, but what does it say for us metaphorically? And certainly this has something to do with dying to yourself. I mean, we get this in Matthew's version here. Soon after this passage, we would get, those who seek to save their life will lose it, and those who seek to lose it will save it. Save it for my sake. And that with this whole idea of, in some sense, the killing of our desires as the thing that is number one.
That's right.
That's what Jesus is getting at, is you need to recalibrate your interior life so that the whole world is not built around you.
Yeah.
I think that's the big deal here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. I see that as the big deal of Jesus' teaching, his discipline, his way, and the way of all the great spiritual traditions and paths.
Agree.
It is breaking up our self-centeredness. And self-centeredness, it can sound like, that's what it comes down to, challenging our self-centeredness. That can sound kind of pedestrian maybe. But I've looked at it this way for years. So this has been sort of a simple framework that's been very helpful for me, that Okay. Reality is what it is. The universe is vast, and there is no possible construal of reality objectively, as it really is, that has us, that is me, John, in the center.
Can't be you, John, 'cause it's
nobody
me.
else
Right.
who has ever lived, with the possible exception of my mother, has thought that I'm the center of the universe. Yes. No one, no living thing has ever seen it that way. And yet I have spent, 90 to 99% of my life, my waking hours, thinking, feeling that I am in the center of the universe. Yeah. So if I'm like anybody else, just going out on a limb here, I'll just speak for myself then. I don't want to presume whether anybody can relate to this, but I have been profoundly deluded, like basically my whole life. And here comes Jesus, and also here comes the Buddha, and here come others to say, not only are you delusional, but your delusion is causing you incredible suffering.
Yeah.
And
nice.
I want to set you free from that.
Nice.
And so what are delivered by Jesus here is very intense shocks to the system. It's like he's just taking a chisel and he's just chipping away at everything that, I'm kind of mixing metaphors here, but everything that keeps us from seeing and living in reality as it really is, which is, of course, centered on and founded upon and sustained by divine love and life.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's really good. I love that. I love your discussion of you at the center of the universe. You know what it reminded me of when you were talking? I have a frozen shoulder, and Elizabeth's brother-in-law, David Schneider, was talking about this, and then Chris Mattern is an orthopedic surgeon at St. Mark's. I saw at the gym last night, and so in the frozen shoulder, my capsule is a mess, and it's all swollen, and I can't move my left arm around. I can't lift my left arm above here, and so they're talking about how do you break this thing that constricts you, and so I'm going to have a procedure that will expand my capsule. And then Chris was telling me last night at the gym, well, sometimes we just he didn't quite say it this way, we knock the patients out, and then we load them up with all kinds of stuff, and we just take their arm and go, and we just break apart the thing that is holding it in place. We just rip it apart. Yeah. And it reminded me of Jesus sometimes, just like taking our frozen shoulder and going, well, you don't understand. There's a much greater movement than you've got here. I'm just going to go and yank up your shoulder and break it to shreds. And a little bit of what I hear, the saying is, I'm going to take you out of the center of things. You ready? Here we go. And you're like, that hurts. Yeah. That can't be. Whatever happened to Jesus, the nice guy? That didn't feel so good. And so I think that's a really great way to talk about what he's doing. So then he tells us these two parables, right? They're parabolic, at least. One is the tower. I mean, who's going to build a tower and only get halfway through, and everyone's going to laugh at them? And then the king going to war thinks he's got 10,000 guys, and then he looks over the horizon, the other guy's got 20, and he's like, "Oh smokes, I'm going to get slaughtered here. I got to make a deal." But the whole idea is this calculating. These are calculations, and so I ask you, how many people do you know who ever truly calculated the cost of following Jesus? Is this a thing they do once and they're done? I'm all in? Or is this a thing they do progressively? Like, Jesus wants me to give money to this homeless man and I'm walking by and I don't want to do it. Is that where are we? What kind of calculations are we doing here?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, I know people, I'm kind of in this category myself, who, as an adult, as a rather young adult in my case, doesn't have to be as an adult, but as like a thinking person, accepted, I'm putting quotes around that because I'm thinking of something that C.S. Lewis said where, he said, "I didn't decide upon God, I was decided upon." But nevertheless, I experienced it as a certain sort of accepting of Christianity as an adult, after really thinking it through. Does this make sense intellectually? Does it make sense? Does it move me at a heart level?
Yeah.
All of that. Does it really capture me? But it wasn't along the lines that Jesus is talking about here. Like, what will it really require of me in terms of my livelihood? I mean, on certain levels, like, yes, like, of course, I'm not going to like be like a lawless degenerate. But am I going to give up all my possessions? Am I prepared to suffer and die? Yeah. Am I really going to think through what this means for how I, relate to my family? No, not really. I don't know people who have gone about it in that way.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I remember those phases, and one of the reasons I was so dedicated to you in your call to the priesthood and the things I wrote to the bishops was because I was like, this guy has evaluated it. He has looked around, and I remember when I had my reconversion experience. Mm-hmm. I got it out of the Hebrew Scriptures. It was out of the book of Proverbs, and I had to decide when I should become Jewish. Because I grew up in a church that I hardly knew that Jesus was Jewish. I thought Jesus was Catholic. Right. And so I did a little of that evaluating too. But what you're talking about, I would say I only know one person who did the full evaluation and decided not to be a Christian because Jesus pushed it all the way to the end and was killed for it, and he decided that he was so extreme that he would do that, and so he then became a Buddhist and a very committed Buddhist and an advisor to the Dalai Lama. He's a fascinating guy, and he's very conversant in Jesus. He just said, Jesus was too hard for me. I couldn't do it. I can do the Buddha. I can't do Jesus. Jesus is too hard for me.
Fair enough.
So interesting about this calculation.
Yeah. I like, well, first of all, I just thought of a G.K. Chesterton saying that I think is apropos here, which is Christianity has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and not tried.
Yes, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. Good call and bringing G.K. Chesterton to the podcast.
A good turn of phrase there.
Yeah.
But I like these two images that Jesus gives us of building a tower and of waging war, because I think they're more than just rhetorical devices for saying that there's a cost to this. I think that building and war are really good metaphors for our lives in Christ.
Oh, good.
We're to build a life founded upon Jesus and his discipline, his way. And I mean, he is the head cornerstone, right? Yeah. The stone that the builders rejected has become the head cornerstone. And we are to be people built on that and to build our lives around him and on him. And therefore, it really is a creative, constructive project and endeavor. It's not a passive thing. It's a very active thing. But as challenging as that is, it is, at least to my mind, equally exciting and inspiring, that there's a real life to build and unfold here.
Yeah. John, love that. I've always been relatively and quickly dismissive of these two parables. You just gave me the hook for me to really integrate them at a deeper level. I'm really grateful to you for that. I never thought in the terms that you're thinking of. I very, very much like what you say about the building, because I was never heading out to build a tower. So, but think of all the things I've tried to build during my life. Interior buildings. Yeah, really, really good. And also, spiritual warfare. And yes. Maybe we don't have time to go into all of that. There's a lot of medieval books about spiritual warfare.
Right.
But just because I want to come back eventually here to
right.
To Dietrich Bonhoeffer. So, well, let's just touch on this last line here. So therefore, none of you can become my disciple if you do not give up all your possessions. Jesus is like hammering nails here. Jesus hammers this one, bang, 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 throughout the gospel according to Luke.
Yeah.
Money and possessions.
Yeah.
I think the best insight I've gotten on this, I came from, again, a shout out to Reverend Elizabeth, getting a lot of Reverend Elizabeth here and her family too, extended family too, to the whole Garnsey family here. But when she was talking about some reading that she had done, that the way the Greek word works here, that there's no word for possessions as we use the word for possessions, and therefore it's things at your disposal, disposable things that you can either at your disposal. You have this stuff, and that one of the potential translations is that if you do not give up your possessing, I know that'll really ring your inner spiritual bell too,
right.
given all the traditions we have about letting go of our possessiveness
right.
is the key to our freedom.
Yes.
We hold our own prison door shut.
Yeah.
Right, and so by letting go of our possessiveness, the door flies open.
Yes,
and I like that more than you got to sell all the junk or get rid of all the stuff.
And it also just doesn't seem to actually track with what Jesus expects of his followers more generally. We have Zacchaeus, the tax collector, who says, "I will sell half of what I have or give away half of my wealth or whatever." Yeah. And Jesus is like, "Cool." Yeah. And Joseph of Arimathea. Is able to provide Jesus a dignified burial place out of his largesse, out of his abundance. So I think that has to be right. But I do think that, as you said, it's about attachment. Yeah. And this is back to how Jesus sits alongside the other great teachers, this sort of perennial philosophy and wisdom that are, along with our egocentricity, our attachments are causing us not only to be deluded, but also causing us to suffer immensely and then to inflict suffering on others. I mean, we're living in a time where there are increasingly sort of dystopic, apocalyptic scenarios that the richest people are trying to insulate themselves from should they play out. So, tech billionaires, among others, they all have bunkers, they all have tons of weapons. They have armed security. They have pilots. They have, some place they can go in New Zealand if things go too sideways here, whatever it is. What a sad state of affairs and a sad existence to be so attached to your wealth and your status in the world, your things, your houses, whatever, that you just are just building up walls between you and the rest of the world. And I don't know if they've really thought it through, because if stuff really hits the fan, is their private pilot going to want to ditch their own family to fly them to their bunker in New Zealand? But anyway, I think this is where wealth really takes us off the rails of our own soul's well-being, but also living in just and harmonious relationships with others. Yeah, we could do many podcasts on this topic. Yes. Yeah, it's a big one. It's a very big one.
So, thank you for your thoughts on that. I'm going to not respond to that, so that within our pod time we can circle back to what we said we want to circle back to. Yeah. And so, why don't you? I'm very interested in what you have to say, and I got a thought or two, but why don't you bring us back to the cost of
this is a really live question for me, both as a Christian and as a pastor, right? Yeah. Like, how do I take a passage like this and understand what it means, what is truly required of me and of anybody who's under my spiritual care or counsel in any way? What is required of us now, as in our case, 21st century Americans? And I think just some historical context really helps with this. So Jesus, launches this movement. It is countercultural. It is a minority. It is met with, among other things, by persecution by the Roman Empire from time to time, at least. And this is the state of affairs, more or less, for a few centuries. That it's a minority and an occasionally persecuted minority, and in any case, always a countercultural one. And then Constantine comes along, Emperor Constantine. He converts to Christianity and legalizes it. And then after he is emperor, the next one, Theodosius, makes it the official religion of the empire. So at this point, Christianity goes mainstream. And it all of a sudden, almost overnight, becomes really easy to be a Christian. It costs you, in a certain sense, nothing. And this is what leads to the rise of monasticism, Benedict, and so on. People like this look around and they see the mainstreaming of Christianity, and it loses its radical edge, its prophetic witness, and so on. So they sort of retreat and go off, to really try to follow the way of Jesus in earnest. And then as Christendom, basically Western European culture under the religion of Christianity, as it develops and unfolds over the centuries, you have mainstream secular society, all of which is Christian, but people really are just kind of living their lives. They're not like thinking, how do I be a follower of Jesus in every moment? And then you have the people who have taken religious vows, really trying to live that out in earnest. I think the simplest, most basic thing to say about it is that this sort of watering down, I think, is a fair enough way to put it, of the demands of discipleship for like the average Christian just living in the world subsequent to all of this is just an inevitable fact of history. It's just kind of where we are. What I find really interesting besides that is thinking about these things, these developments theologically, because there have been different frameworks offered for assessing this, some of which are quite critical, some of which are more sympathetic. And that's what I find, might be worth touching on here.
Yeah.
Is it good, bad, neutral, mixed bag, et cetera, that, Christianity has gone mainstream in this way, such that it becomes easier to follow or be a Christian at least, if not follow Jesus actually.
Oh, wow. Okay, so big topic here.
Yeah.
I think that, let me just say that, let me just bring it right up to Dietrich Bonhoeffer, then I'll answer the question. So during Dietrich Bonhoeffer's day, when he writes the introduction to the cost of discipleship, he talks about, not in the terms you described, but he lays out what he calls cheap grace, and that he, based on Luther's idea that salvation by grace alone, everyone said there's a good idea, then turned that into a law, felt that they didn't need to do much because Jesus already won the battle and all this sort of stuff. So, so that Lutheranism accidentally blessed what you're talking about. Lutheranism and accidentally blesses the watering downness of the gospel. And I think that the interesting part for me, I laid out by you, the challenging question by you, the challenge put forth by Jesus. When I was making my notes this morning, I had like Jesus all or nothing. And then I said, this is completely different about parish life,
exactly.
which is all shades of gray.
Yes.
And at my 50th birthday, I remember I was at a Bruce Springsteen concert, great seats, by the way. And just before Bruce came out, my best friend said to me, what have you learned in 50 years? And I said, well, I learned that, being an adult is you get knocked down, you get back up, and you keep walking. You get knocked down, you get back up, and you keep walking. And the second thing is everything's shades of gray. And so we have here shades of gray. Yeah. And the same thing is true with our religiosity. There are clearly lighter lights and darker darks in the gray, but there's no all or nothingness. And the whole movement that it arrived in the history you were talking about that led to first to the desert fathers and mothers, and then later down the line to the monastic movement, and then to the Reformation, where basically Luther says, no, you got to take, who had been a monk, you got to live this stuff out in your daily life. And I think the challenge of living Jesus in the daily life is a very shades of gray operation, and that we hear these words now as wake-up calls to make sure we haven't fallen asleep. We haven't just relied on cheap grace. Like, wait a minute, we got to take this stuff seriously. It means we got things happening. Yes. So, anyway, I know we're coming. I want you to have one more comment, but I know we got to kind of wrap this up. But really, really interesting, John, for you to bring it to this point.
Yeah. I think first of all, I agree with everything that you said. That we do live in a shades of gray world. And what that doesn't mean for me is that, anything goes.
Right.
What it does mean for me is that a tremendous amount of discernment is required for knowing what Jesus calls us to as a body, as a collective, as a church, and as individuals living our lives in the particulars of our lives in the moment as they unfold. So it calls for humility, discernment, but alongside that, a real, I want to say, fierce passion for Jesus's way and its life-giving and liberating power, and to really look for how that wants to be, needs to be lived out and expressed in particular circumstances. But like who's it, Heraclitus, the pre-Socratic Greek philosopher, said you never stand in the same river twice because it's always different water. It requires both, I think, clarity, but also a lot of humility and discernment.
John, that's the last word for the pod. That is really, really brilliantly and beautifully said. I'm in agreement with you. And listen, folks, thanks for hanging in here with us as we came to the end here, because I really do believe that that's exactly what we're doing, is we're trying to make sense out of Jesus in the context of our daily lives and wrestling through this really radical call that he delivers to us in the midst of the chaos and, ambiguities of our lives. So God bless you. John, thank you. As I said, Reverend Elizabeth coming back in a few weeks, and peace be with you. And thanks for hanging in. Look forward to chatting with you in the days to come. Take care. Bye-bye.